Dark Side. I'm your host, Brianna.
And I'm Tyson.
And this is Dark Adaptation. This is part 2 of the Erin Chorney case. So make sure you've listened to part 1 before you continue. I mean, if you want, I guess do whatever, but usually it makes sense.
It would be weird.
Part 1, part 2.
Yeah, I would call you weird for that.
I've had it where I've been listening to a podcast and the episode that comes on is a part 2, and I'll be listening and I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. And then I'm like, oh, okay, let's go to part 1. But I've never been like, yes, this is a part 2. I think I'll start here.
Yeah. I'm a two-parter person, but, some people, they're just one part of a two-part.
Sure. Are you,
know what I mean?
like, I think
you picking up what I'm putting down?
No, but you seem to be, so I feel like you might be making an example for yourself.
Yes.
I guess I'm just going to start with a recap of what we discussed in part 1, because I still have lots to tell you.
Okay.
And I don't know how other people felt, but you seemed pretty mad that I just stopped when I did.
Yeah. Yeah. I was pretty fucking upset. It was so abrupt.
You're like, oh.
Right at the good part.
Fucking shit. So in part 1, we talked about Erin Chorney, obviously. She's the center of this story. And she was an amazing 18-year-old girl from Brandon, Manitoba, who vanished after leaving her mom's house in April 2002. Erin's parents were divorced, so she spent her time between her mom's house and her dad's house. And at the time she disappeared, she had been primarily staying with her dad, but she had gone over to her mom's for a sleepover, so she could spend time with her mom and her siblings. That night, April 21st, 2002, Erin told her mom she was going to go out for coffee with a friend, and she'd be back later. And she told her mom, if I plan on being out really late or I'll be spending the night, I will call you so you know. And unfortunately, Erin did not call, which didn't initially worry her mom because Erin had done this sort of thing before, like gone out all night and not called, even though she said she would. So her mom was more disappointed than anything else, not so much worried. With no word from Erin, her mom started calling Erin's friends to see if they'd heard from her or if they'd been with her, but none of them had. She called her ex-husband, so Erin's father, Darcy, who also hadn't heard from or seen Erin, so the two of them went to the Brandon police to report Erin missing. The police took Erin's disappearance seriously pretty quickly and started their investigation, which was headed by Detective Lockhart. And Lockhart began the investigation by interviewing Erin's friends, family, and boyfriend, Michael Bridges. Lockhart found Michael to be cold, emotionless. His answers seemed rehearsed. And when he interviewed Erin's friends, he learned that Michael was also a dirtbag who abused Erin physically. And leading up to her disappearance, she had been distancing herself from Michael and telling her friends she was done with him.
He used to be a piece of shit. He's still a piece of shit. Still is, though.
Still is, though. So when Michael revealed during his first police interview that he was the last known person to have been with Erin the night she disappeared, Michael became police's number one suspect. Police didn't have anything to arrest him on, so they began a surveillance detail, which included patrolling Michael's neighborhood, tapping his phone, and having an officer tail him. That didn't produce anything damning, so the police obtained warrants to search Michael's mom's station wagon and house, which again didn't produce anything damning. Police did find weird notes written by Michael that meticulously detailed his last day with Erin, but again, it's suspicious, not damning. When police were struggling to progress their investigation forward, an anonymous letter writer entered the scene, approaching the one-year anniversary of Erin's disappearance. In total, 3 letters were written. The first was apparently written by an acquaintance of Erin's alleged murderer, and the remaining 2 were seemingly written by the killer. And I say apparently, allegedly, seemingly, because these letters have never been officially connected to Erin's case, police have never figured out who wrote them, and it's unlikely they were written by anyone involved in Erin's disappearance.
So for the fact that they're also just complete dickbags.
Exactly. Their writer or writers are just turds. It's just stupid. You're just some like loser freak with nothing better to do, and you're needlessly contributing to this case that's already really frustrating and full of dead ends.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also unlikely that this person knows what the heck they're actually talking about, because the letters just had like vague, broad statements that if you just had even an iota of creativity, you could have put into a letter. Like, there wasn't anything that was like, oh shit, this is something only someone involved would know. They're just being like, yeah, they're murdered. Erin's murdered and she's buried.
Yeah, it was like vague and also only details published in like the paper or something.
Mm-hmm.
Which, says everything.
Yeah. When we left off, I was talking about how investigators were also getting frustrated that the case wasn't moving forward. Like I said, there was lots of tips and activity and stuff like that, but it was just frustrating. It was all dead ends. Their searches and surveillance efforts didn't bring them any closer to finding Erin, and nothing was happening to move the investigation forward. Michael was still police's number one suspect, but they were cognizant of the fact that they didn't have any solid evidence, no crime scene, no witnesses, and most importantly, no confession. So Lockhart and his team had made the decision to seek assistance from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, and ultimately the Brandon Police Service and the RCMP teamed up, and they concocted a, quote, clever sting operation to expose Michael Bridges' secrets once and for all. And that's where I had ended it last time.
Sting his ass.
So they were gonna sting him right in the butt.
Right in the butthole.
It was gonna be a sting of an operation. And I think that's where we'll pick it up.
All right, pick it up.
I mean, that's just how it is now. That's where I'll pick it up from. That's where it goes. It's just this clever sting operation is what I was talking about in the beginning of part 1 when I said that we'll be talking about my favorite tactic that Canadian law enforcement uses, just because of its elaborateness and sheer audacity. To solve Erin's case and get the answers they needed, RCMP and the Brandon Police Service teamed up to utilize a major crime technique known as the Mr. Big Sting Operation.
All right.
It's also really hard for me not to say Brantford Police Service.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. Every time you say it, I'm like, are you Brantford? No.
Because that's obviously where
Brennan.
Where we live, and I always want to say Brantford Police Service because that's what it is.
Yeah.
And it looks so like similar when you're just like glancing down at my notes. So I'm like, Brandon, not Brantford. Manitoba, not Ontario.
Yeah.
So a Mr. Big operation sounds like
a good time.
Right? I was gonna say it sounds like you're in a chocolate factory.
Yeah.
Gonna get some what the fuck, Cadbury? I don't even know. Mr. Big. I think it's Cadbury.
I don't
anyway, it just sounds like I could go for a chocolate bar. I don't think Americans have Mr. Big though, sorry. I think it's a Canadian thing.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, and probably an English thing if it is Cadbury.
Oh, kind of like, is it Coffee Crisp? That also is the same thing? I think they don't have Coffee Crisp.
Probably not.
Or it's like not popular there or something like that.
Yeah, maybe they don't. I don't think so, actually, because it's Nestle, right? Because I know a lot of people in the States love Kit Kats, but they're not there. You have to come to Canada to get them.
All right, well, people in the States, let us know.
Yeah, let us know. Are we talking out our ass?
Tell me.
Or...
Oh my god, just tell us.
Okay. Ew.
I love you.
Dope. Okay. Mr. Big Operation is a Canadian police technique by which a suspect is drawn into a fictitious criminal organization with the ultimate goal of securing a confession to whatever crime the police are actually investigating. So in this case, Michael Bridges' involvement in Erin Chorney's disappearance. Over a period of weeks or months, usually months. I've never heard of one that's just weeks. But
that's fucking efficient if they do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Undercover officers within the, quote, organization befriend the suspect and offer them jobs with financial rewards, which is usually just straight up cash. The jobs will start small because the person has to prove they're valuable to and a good fit for the organization. And then their responsibility is gradually increased. So jobs include transporting goods, meeting other underground criminals, stuff like that. Again, all of this is staged and takes time. After however long, the suspect is typically offered some sort of permanent or higher position, but there's one condition. They have to confess to any and all crimes they've done because the big boss, or Mr. Big, is going to find out one way or another via their informants and connections, and he has to know how to cover your ass. So it's better if you come clean and confess everything first to prove your trust and loyalty, and the crime boss can potentially help cover up the crime.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the end goal here is for the investigators to get the suspects to confess their involvements in the actual crime being investigated. Now, not all Mr. Big sting operations are conducted in this exact manner and circumstances, but it always revolves around a fictitious criminal organization and eventually confessing to Mr. Big or the big boss of the crime ring.
Yeah. I always have a big problem with the Mr. Big stings, but they're always so funny.
That's what I mean when I say, like, it's just my favorite thing to talk about, because it's so audacious. You're just like, wow, this is so elaborate. This is wild. And that is like the next paragraph I have here is about the controversy.
It's like if all the theater kids grew up to be cops.
Honestly.
I forget which documentary we watched where they had like clips. They showed clips of catching these two teenagers. I want to say.
Yeah.
And I was watching it first time ever learning about the Mr. Big, and my jaw was on the floor. But I was just laughing because of the way the guys at the end will try and tell you, like try and like cajole you into like confessing. Is just so like, I don't know, if you had like the presence of mind and I guess you weren't like courted with this guy for like weeks on end building trust, you'd be like, get the fuck out of here, officer.
I know.
Like
the way that I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the confession tapes.
Yeah.
And that particular one is a rough one. And the cop is fucking this, that. Every other word is like, no one really talks like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, so hammed up.
It's like if you're walking in like the like underground subway or something and you see a guy who's obviously spent time at the gym holding the fucking boom box with a low brim cap and a Puma shirt and some fucking basketball shorts and shit, and you're just, you just want to say like, good morning, officer.
Oh my god.
And see if he looks up.
It's cool that it's like funny that you say that though, because when I was looking into obviously the Mr. Big operations just to see like what exactly they are, obviously, so I could describe it to everyone. One of the things I learned is that because these operations are huge, it's like minimum 15 people to do this type of investigation, this or operation. And you have officers or agents or whatever right out there on the front lines getting in with criminals and suspects. So they are obviously playing a part. They themselves usually as a criminal type of person. And a lot of the time they actually use their real name because you don't want to run the risk of being out in public and someone coming up to you and being like, oh, hey, Dyson. Yeah. And you're with like the people that you're trying to, you're working over.
Yeah.
And then in that split second, because you can't predict every single thing that's going to happen, and then risk that blowing your cover because, you told the guys that your name was like David. And they're like, who's Dyson? And then immediately plant that seed of doubt. So it's like it can be like super dangerous for these officers that are doing the operation because
it's definitely ballsy as fuck. I mean, I'll commend them for that.
Yeah. So like you're saying, you have a problem with it, and lots of people do. This major crime technique has ethical and moral dilemmas when it comes to policing and eventual justice for the crime in question. And people argue both sides. They can say that it's acceptable, it's a vital police tactic.
You
that,
gotta play a little dirty to catch the bad guys.
yeah,
Yeah.
or that you can argue that it's unreliable. And the main problem being the confessions, because police can say, like, well, we would never have gotten this suspect to confess, and it's the only way to get justice.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can argue that the confession is false. It's elicited out of the suspect in a high stake, high pressure environment. So it's a very controversial technique.
Yeah, and it's financially
Yes.
there's like a financial incentive
very
for these people to
expensive.
lie. Well, no, I mean even just for the person to lie in their confession.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, you're talking to some guy who's like apparently in your eyes like a grizzled veteran of the fucking underworld, right? Promising you connections with this like lucrative boss of some kind, this Mr. Big, and then saying like, if you want to work with us, if you want to keep earning money, you want this kind of financial backing, essentially, you have to tell us everything about this thing that you've done. And it better be good.
They won't ever lead, though. Like, in Michael's case, they would never have been like, if you did murder that girl, like, you have to say so.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they would never say that. Like, it has to be, it's said in a way that's like, it doesn't matter how small the crime is. You stole a chocolate bar. It doesn't matter how big the crime is. You you murdered 8 people.
Mm-hmm.
Confess everything and anything.
But you can still lie back on, like, especially if you're trying to build proof street credibility with this, like to lie back on real world examples that you've been accused of.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the easiest to come to mind. Especially if they're looking into you in this type of way, you've obviously been accused of and have probably gotten word of people thinking that you've done A or B, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. To me, that's just a very big possibility, like too much of a possibility that I'm not comfortable with it, where they could be just talking out their ass to impress someone.
Yes. And it's so nuanced and specific to each, case that they're actually investigating or whatever. And you would hope that if a case ever goes to trial and they use this confession in it, you would just hope that there's other things there, not just this confession.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it is very controversial, to the point that it's actually outlawed in the United States and Britain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's really just
us. We're just fine with it, I guess. I don't know. I'm uncomfortable with it. If we can't do lie detectors, I don't think we should be doing this.
You could do polygraphs, you just can't
use the, yeah, that's what I mean though. Like they're
yeah. So this very controversial crime technique is what the Brandon police and the RCMP were putting together in order to get their prime suspect, Michael Bridges, to confess to his involvement in Erin's disappearance. So on September 23rd, 2003, the sting operation was put into motion, and it began when an undercover agent went to Michael's house pretending to be conducting a survey for a local radio station and invited Michael to sign up for a contest where the first prize was tickets to an NHL game to see the Flames play in Calgary. Calgary. It's the way, it's when I'm reading it.
Yeah.
It's the same when I said Newfoundland or whatever, and I was like, I don't know why I said it like that.
Yeah.
I've never said that. It's Newfoundland. It's definitely just because I'm reading. I'm also just dumb. Michael signed up, excited at the idea that he could go see his favorite team play for free. A month later, Michael was notified that he was one of the contest winners, and he was going to Calgary, all expenses paid, and he was fucking pumped.
Oh yeah.
While your face was dead when you did that.
Sorry, I was like in my mind trying to think of anything I'd be interested to do in Calgary.
Do you even know anything about Calgary?
No, that's why I was kind of just deadpan. I was like,
It doesn't matter. You're not going. You didn't win this contest.
All right.
And here's one thing you can do. Go and watch the Flames play. He was pumped. Michael lived it up. He went to the hockey game. He went out for dinner, and he topped off the night at a strip club. There you go. You could go to a strip club.
Woo!
While he was at the club, he met another contest winner named Brock. The two hit it off and spent the rest of their all expenses paid getaway together. Brock even drove Michael home, and they continued to hang out even after the mini vacation was over. Michael was clearly intrigued by this mysterious man, especially after Brock told him that he wants to, quote, expand his business operation.
I thought you were gonna tell me like he wanted to like catch them all, and he's gonna go to a bunch of gyms and get all those badges.
Listen, will you join this raid with me?
I have
that
a
could
mission
be taken two ways.
I'm about to jump on.
Yeah, exactly. Field research. So he had to expand his business operation, and Brandon would be a good place to do it. So Michael helped Brock find an apartment in town. Michael has no idea that he was being pulled into an elaborate sting operation, and his new friend is actually an undercover agent, and that police officers are following their every move. The two men hung out regularly. They would meet for dinner, beers, stuff like that, and slowly Brock is letting Michael into his mysterious crime world. In early December 2003, Brock brought Michael to a small town northwest of Brandon to a, quote, secret location. There, another man passed Brock an envelope stuffed full of cash, and everything is very secretive. It's on the down low. And Michael is starting to get a taste of the life he could have if he was a part of this organization, which he wants to be. By this point, Brock has taken Michael under his wing, and he's becoming entrenched in what is obviously an organized crime syndicate. Michael even gets a bit of responsibility after he and Brock were out eating lunch or drinking beer or doing whatever they do. And during this meetup, Brock got a call from the boss and actually recommended Michael for whatever job they were talking about. So now Michael is going from this like silent observer, kind of just a little tag along, to a member of this crime ring where he's tasked with making deliveries on his own. And remember, this is all staged.
Yeah,
It's
this
crazy.
is insane.
This is just a team of RCMP officers and detectives just staging this whole world.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Even the radio contest alone would be so complicated to pull off. I mean, to make it convincing.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I was just the whole time I was thinking like, did they like announce that on radio then? Like the winners, or did they just say like, no, you just won?
I think that's why they initiated it by just going to his house. So they probably were in the neighborhood, and they probably just went to his house and was just like, "Hi, yeah, we're conducting a survey for fucking Calgary. Tickets. Here you go."
It's still so complicated. Like you were just talking about how like these guys can't even have like, some of them won't even take fake names in case it blows their fucking cover. So like, you know, radio contest shit, like they probably had a real station and shit, and like getting that all together is probably so fucking complicated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just thinking about like, because it said that in my research and what I've just said. Sorry, my brain just stopped working for a second. Gotta count how many just small strokes I have.
One.
Okay, so what I was going to say is that Michael signs up for this contest and he's not notified until a month later. So what if Michael was like some impatient shit who just couldn't wait to find out if he won tickets to the Flames game, and he like started calling the radio station to be like, "Hey, did I miss the draw or whatever?" Like you would have to have something in place everywhere
and be like, "Yeah, this is like we're doing this. Just
shut the fuck up if he calls. Send him over to me, RCMP." So yes, Michael's going from, you know, a little tag along to actually doing stuff on his own, deliveries, whatever. And he is still working very closely with Brock, though. And one day, Brock tells Michael that a girlfriend of a gang member had stolen money and run off with it. So Brock asked Michael to help him track this woman down, which they do. And she's at a motel just north of Winnipeg. And when they get there, Michael sat in the car waiting while Brock went into the motel room and beat the shit out of this woman. Now, again, this is all staged, but they went totally Hollywood with this beating.
Really?
There were blood capsules, hair pulling. They were throwing each other around the room, on the bed, ripping each other's clothes, and Brock even came out of the room with bloody knuckles. Like, they, yeah, it was just,
I like this, that this works on like a deeper level too, because he's a piece of shit who had apparently beaten his girlfriend. So they were like sliding it in. They're like easily trying to see like if he's going to react negatively to this idea. Like, are there any little red flags popping up yet? No, he's fine with it. He just sat as a bystander. Oh,
that's literally my next sentence. I put here that Michael ate this shit up, and it does seem extreme and intense, but it was all done with the intention of getting Michael comfortable talking about violence against women and to pave the way for where their investigation was headed, which was obviously to get something out of him about what he did or knows about Erin. So yeah, that's exactly it.
yeah.
They were like, "This, we know this guy's
Pretty
history."
sneaky, Mr. Big.
And then Michael was definitely getting closer and more comfortable with Brock. And he started talking about how this was the good life and he loves the easy money. And Brock is like, you know, sure, it's great, but you're doing like, what you're doing is just small potatoes. You're just doing like deliveries and stuff, man. Like, if you want in on the action and the big bucks, then you have to really be a part of the operation. You're just kind of like a outsider right now. But of course, you have to prove yourself. And to prove yourself, you have to show you mean business, starting with revealing any and all past crimes to the big boss. And it doesn't matter what it is. If you were caught or not, you have to come clean so the boss knows what he's dealing with and how to take care of it. And the clincher is that the boss is powerful and he's all-knowing and he will find out regardless. So it's mainly a test of honesty and loyalty. And this is, I assume, the speech that Brock is giving Michael.
Yeah. It's not far off from what I saw in that video.
Except it would be like, now,
fucking.
yeah, starting, gotta fucking reveal any and all fucking past crimes to the fucking big boss. And that's literally
fucker.
What it is. It fucking doesn't matter what the fuck it is if you were caught or fucking not. And you're just like, can you calm the fuck down?
That was like almost one of the biggest tells to me. Yeah. I mean, other than the fact that the guy's just like nagging at stuff, like just obviously just setting up stuff where you'd be like, again, I feel like he really wants me to overshare, about but
a different case, right?
I know, but I'm just saying, like, the swearing just almost takes you out of it because it's just so bad.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I don't think Brock was like that, but
obviously not. This sounds a little more successful.
But then again, we don't know. We weren't there. I didn't hear Brock talk. So he gets this whole spiel about, the boss is all knowing and he'll find out anyway. So just come clean. And Michael was down. He could see himself working for this crime ring. So now the sting operation was coming to its final stage. Michael was set to meet with Mr. Big in a week. But before he went into this meeting, Brock wanted to make sure Michael was ready. So the two met at a Winnipeg restaurant to prepare and sort of do like this little practice run. And of course, Brock secretly recorded audio of the whole conversation. So Brock tells Michael to reveal any and all crimes he's participated in, no matter how big, no matter how small. Leading up to this point, Michael had spoken very little about Erin. It was just, if he did talk about her, it wasn't by her name. It was mostly just in reference and just saying things in passing. And during this practice run, Michael told Brock about how he killed a girl in a, quote, terrible, tragic accident. He said that he and this girl were arguing. She was the aggressor. Things got out of hand and he pushed her out of frustration. So Brock just listens quietly. He's showing no reaction to what he's hearing, basically just acting as though he hears this type of thing all the time and it's something they can make go away really easily. So the practice run, just, that's pretty much it. It goes okay. But when Brock is done the meeting and he goes to talk things over with investigators, because he's literally an RCMP agent, he hands over his recording and they check it out and they're just like, we're not buying that story at all. This whole terrible, tragic accident story, there's more to it. And Brock, you have to figure it out because this won't do.
Fuck.
So Brock and Michael meet again the next day, and I don't know exactly where the conversation goes, what he says, but Brock likely says, like, you know, I'm not buying it. And the boss, if I'm not buying it, then the big boss definitely won't buy this story. And because this time, I guess whatever Brock was telling Michael must have worked, because Michael sort of comes clean. He says that fine, it wasn't just this terrible tragic accident. I didn't just push her. It was just straight up cold-blooded murder.
Okay.
And he says that he buried her body in a nearby cemetery in someone else's freshly dug grave.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
That's fucked.
Yeah. And I bet that's what Brock was thinking, but he has to be like this hard-ass crime guy. So he's just sitting there like, cool. Anyway, take me there. So Michael takes Brock to the cemetery, to a headstone that read, oh shit, I meant to look this up. The headstone has the last name Borotzik on it. And Michael's like, this is where Erin is buried. She's about 2 feet deep. She's face up and she's wrapped in a white blanket. And remember, this whole sting operation at this point is happening in like late 2003. And she disappeared in April 2002. So it's been a while. It's been almost 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're just going to look down and see like dirt still. Like it's just going to look like a normal plot in a cemetery. So Brock reported these details back to the covert team. And they look into it to see if this story makes any sense. If what Michael is telling them could be corroborated at all. So they do determine that a lady named Jean Borotzik had passed away around the time that Erin went missing in 2002. And her grave, the plot, was consistent with the area that Michael took Brock to. So the police are like, okay, he did lead Brock in this area, pointed out a headstone that has this name. This woman did pass away at this time. Kind of lines up. And the police actually obtain a search warrant for what Lockhart, who's the detective, called a, quote, probe without gravesite. So that basically just means we need to locate an unmarked grave by probing the ground.
Okay, yeah.
So this warrant was approved by a judge, but under very explicit instructions not to disturb the graves below, because this is a cemetery where a woman had just been laid to rest not even 2 years before.
Yeah.
So the judge is like, okay, based on information you have, this guy is saying he buried her 2 feet deep, so do not go anywhere below there, because, you know, you got 6 feet until you hit something.
Yeah.
So the covert operation began with a forensic team locating the gravesite. I just have a hard time believing it was a covert, because they literally used jackhammers to excavate small sections of the frozen ground, because it's like December at this.
Right, yeah.
Or it's like December, January at this point. So
what are you guys doing over there?
Nope, sorry, it's like February.
Shoveling?
So still. Yeah. So it is February in Manitoba, so it is freezing, it is snowy, the ground is frozen. So they have to use a jackhammer, so I don't know how covert that is, but they are excavating small sections of the frozen ground, and they're probing for any sign of Erin. So they did this very meticulously and respectfully as you can, I suppose. And the first 5 probes failed to turn up anything, but in the 6th hole, a piece of the blanket Michael said Erin was wrapped in was unearthed, and Erin was found. So now all that was left was the final portion of the sting operation, to get that confession. On February 12th, 2004, a surveillance team prepared a Winnipeg hotel room for Michael's final confession. They had the audio recordings that Brock had secretly taken, but they wanted his full confession on video too. So Brock met Michael at the hotel, and they went to the room to do a sort of dress rehearsal of sorts before Mr. Big showed up. So over the course of 90 minutes, Michael meticulously outlined to Brock how and why he killed Erin, this time using her name. Because in the other just audio recordings, he had just referred to like this girl that he killed.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually said Erin's name this time. And he said that they fought after she refused to drop assault charges against him. I'm actually just going to pause here and say that in part 1, I had said that Erin's parents didn't find out about his physical abuse until after she disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's true. I think they did know, especially because of these assault charges. At least her aunt definitely did know, because at some point, like later point during testimony, the aunt does talk about how the last time she saw Erin, it was during a road trip, and she was talking about how she's going to go forth with the assault charges and is done, never wants to see him again. So I think her parents did know.
Okay.
Because her aunt knew, so I would imagine her parents did know.
Yeah.
And I also didn't know about these assault charges until I was finishing the research for the second part. And I just like, how much more of a dirtbag can you be?
Yeah, honestly.
So, yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. So, yes, he says that they fought after she refused to drop assault charges against him. So then he decides that he's going to choke her. So he choked her with his hands, then with his arm. I don't know if it's a headlock or what.
It sounds like a headlock.
Set his arm, and then she fell unconscious.
I guess it might not necessarily be.
I don't know, but he used his arm as well.
Yeah.
To the
Either
point,
way, the amount of force.
exactly, to the point that she was unconscious and she fell to the floor. So she's still alive, but he kind of described it like her breathing was weird and she was making weird sounds, and he believed that she might have been brain dead. So
What a call to make.
I know. So she's still alive or teetering. So he feels like he has no choice but to finish her off. So he dragged her to the bathroom, and he further choked her with a cord that he cut off of his mother's hairdryer. Because remember, he lives with his mom.
Right.
He filled the bathtub with water, and then he drowned her by holding her head underwater for several minutes.
This guy's fucked.
I know.
Yeah.
He then described stripping her naked, placing her in the tub, and washing her body and cleaning her fingernails to remove any of his DNA. And then he went to bed.
Yeah, you could just sleep after that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just to overexerted yourself a little bit there, big guy.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It just keeps getting worse. Like, literally, she wouldn't drop assault charges against you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what you did.
Yeah.
Buddy. So the next day, he decided that he wanted to go and visit his dad at the cemetery where his dad worked. So his mom and dad are divorced, and he lived with his mom. Mm-hmm. And his dad works at the cemetery, and he's like, I want to go and have a chat with him. I just want to try and relax. I've had a crazy night. So he's walking through the cemetery, and he noticed a freshly dug grave in a secluded area, and he decided that he would return after dark to bury Erin in that grave. That night, he wrapped her body in bags and then in a white bedsheet, and he took her to the cemetery around midnight. He described using a metal shovel with a wooden handle to dig her grave, placing her face up after, quote, carefully measuring her body and making last-minute adjustments to the size of the hole. He even told Brock about how he would routinely walk by the grave after she was buried, quote, just to check up on it, just to make sure the dirt's all good, like nothing was bothered, unquote.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing this new, very detailed version of events, Brock just remained calm. He showed no outward emotions. He just decided to ask Michael why he had originally said that it was an accident. Then he said it wasn't, And now he's giving all of this detail. So he's like, why'd you say it was an accident? And then you've since changed your story twice.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a calculated question to make sure that what Michael said was on his own. There wasn't any sort of coercion of any sorts, no inducement to give a false confession, no leading to exaggerate what he had done, nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael just said it simply because he was nervous about offering up too many details to such a horrible crime, which is why it took a few attempts to get the full truth out there. And he's never talked about it before. So it was just a matter of like warming up to really finally saying out loud what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And with the confession out of the way, the hotel room door opened. And instead of Mr. Big, the police entered and arrested Michael. And as he was being handcuffed, he was shown that there was a hidden camera which captured his just dumbfounded face.
Yeah.
And I wish that we could watch this footage. You can't watch footage. There's just a couple of like screenshots of it. And he's just like,
Just dumbfounded.
Yeah, I'll post a photo on Instagram.
Beautiful.
But while he was being led away, Michael's only words to the arresting officers were, just tell me one thing. Is Brock a cop? Just tell me that. Is he a cop?
Oh my God, what a fucking idiot.
That's all I wanted to know. Is my new friend a cop? He's supposed to be my friend.
He can get me out, right?
Brock, post my bail, man.
B-man. Come on.
So in June 2005, nearly a year and a half since his arrest, Michael's trial began where he pleaded not guilty. Brock testified, and this was the first time that Michael saw his friend since he was arrested. That must have been really weird to like know this guy under the guise of him being like some criminal.
It's gonna be your favorite
guy.
day. It has to be your favorite day.
And then you're
doing
actually
that
up there
job.
like, no, I'm a fucking RCMP officer. And
That-
I literally just played you for months.
That would be my favorite day if I was doing that job. I would not be able to stop grinning. I would probably blow kisses.
Oh, you would just keep kissing the microphone. They would be like, sir,
The judge
your
would be like,
credibility is going out the window, Brock.
no, the judge would be threatening to kick me out.
Yeah, he
Hold me in
would.
contempt.
So the confession tape from the hotel room was also played in court. And Debbie and Darcy, who was Erin's mom and dad, they watched some of the video before leaving the courtroom in tears because it's 90 minutes, remember. 90 minutes of Michael meticulously detailing everything he did to their daughter. So they stuck around for a bit, but they ended up leaving in tears because it's got to be so much, especially when you're hoping this whole time that your daughter will come home.
Mm-hmm.
So several family members stayed to watch the whole video, though, and they were seen smiling as they watched Michael's stupid-ass face when he realized on video that he'd been played. So, like you're saying, you would be on the stand just grinning.
Yeah.
And some of her family was smiling just because it was just...
Beautiful.
It must just feel like so good.
Yeah, think about all the families who have who have siblings or something like that, relatives who are victims of violence like that.
Mm-hmm.
And even the ones who do end up getting justice, rarely would they ever get justice that sweet,
Yeah.
where they get to see the look on that fucker's face
Mhm.
after he was made a fucking ass
That's
in
so
front
true.
of so many people.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
I wonder if they also got to hear him yelling, like, just tell me that, man. Is Brock a cop?
Oh, I bet.
Is he? I don't know what he sounds
If I was
like,
cutting
but
if I was cutting the video for them, I would 100% sneak that in there.
they show up the next day and one of their phones go off and that's their ringtone. Just tell me, man. Is he a cop? Michael was represented at the trial by defense lawyer Greg Brodsky. And Greg Brodsky suggested during the trial that, just like Brock, Michael was also playing and embellishing his past in order to impress the gang and make sure that he would get his money. You know, he wanted to be a part of this syndicate and go up in the crime ring.
What is this lawyer, me?
So
Taking the same case?
Greg Brodsky also argued that the confession obtained from the sting is unreliable and that it's the Mounties' Mr. Big operation that should be on trial, saying, quote, they should be outlawed. They should do good police work, convict people on the basis of physical evidence and admissions if they get them, and stop paying people.
Okay, I have a follow-up to that.
Yes, Dyson.
Okay. Fuck you, he led us to the body.
Right. Right.
How's that for physical evidence?
It's so specific.
Yeah.
And they obviously got her body. They had to, I think, wait a bit more to really thaw the ground out and stuff, and do a really respectful excavation, because they're literally excavating Erin from a grave on top of a grave.
Yeah.
Like, it's
See,
fucked.
like, I'm good with if Mr. Big operations are conducted in a way that is not the primary role, but it's rather, like you said, like, it's
in addition to,
it's an auxiliary, like, means of getting to physical evidence, and then using the physical evidence to demonstrate guilt. Then I'm like, yeah, you know what? That's fine. I'm good with that. Fucking prove him guilty.
I do agree. Plus, they would have gotten her body, and they probably could have corroborated parts of his confession with maybe injuries she had.
Mm-hmm.
If they could see, like, oh, she was strangled with hands, there was a ligature involved, she was certainly drowned, because she would have apparently still been alive. He said that he had to drown her to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, they probably could corroborate those details. And yeah, he led them to the body.
Yeah.
By not just offhandedly are you going to be like, in this whole ass cemetery, this one grave is where she's buried.
Do you know, like, how fucking astronomically huge the odds are against just guessing not only the grave site, but the depth?
And saying, I wrapped her in bags, and then I wrapped her in a white blanket.
Yeah.
And they find that.
Yeah.
Like, maybe in this whole situation, you could argue that he had an accomplice or something, so that's why he knew certain details. Maybe he helped the aftermath, but he's never said that.
Yeah,
like,
I was going to say, like, if he made it part of his case, then maybe I'd consider it.
Yeah, he was just straight up saying, like, I didn't do it, though, and Mr. Big sting operation suck ass.
In fact, Mr. Big did it.
Mr. Big did it.
That's my friend Brock.
Is he a cop, though? So on June 29th, 2005, I guess the trial lasted, like, 3 weeks, it seems. Jurors deliberated for less than 7 hours and reached a verdict. 24-year-old Michael was found guilty of murdering Erin Chorney, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. So he was to serve his sentence until 2029 before being able to apply for parole. Michael appealed his conviction, and Greg Brodsky made the sting operation the focus of the appeal when he filed the notice in July 2005, so just weeks after the verdict.
Mm-hmm.
And Greg Brodsky was arguing that all the evidence it yielded, including the confessions, should be excluded. He's saying we should not use anything to do with the sting operation. In October 2006, it didn't work, by the way.
Okay.
In October 2006, Greg Brodsky tried another approach to appeal Michael's first-degree murder verdict, arguing unsuccessfully again that the killing was not premeditated, but was the result of a dispute that escalated. So he's saying, okay, it wasn't premeditated, though. Like, yeah, okay, fine, he did it. He did it. Just can't argue it anymore. But he didn't plan it.
It wasn't intentional.
And 3 Manitoba Court of Appeal justices took less than an hour to decide to uphold the first-degree murder.
Good.
They were like, cool, no.
Yeah, good.
In 2014, Michael told the National Parole Board he's now prepared to sort of take responsibility, because he was never admitting to killing Erin. He was never showing remorse in any capacity. So come 2014, he's saying, I'm ready to engage with Erin's family and her loved ones as part of the healing process for everyone involved. And this way they can talk to me and see me and get what they want from me for their, closure.
Uh-huh.
It was strange, to say the least, because, like I said, he'd never admitted to killing Erin. He tried everything possible to avoid getting caught and being convicted, and was constantly appealing and arguing his verdict.
Mm-hmm.
So her parents were really suspicious of his motives, and they denied his requests. They were just straight up said that no one in her family and Erin's family wants to see his face or hear his voice. They're like, no.
Yeah.
They're probably also fucking sick of him because it's 2014. They can't get rid of him. It's been almost a decade at this point.
Yeah.
And they want to move on, and he just keeps pulling them into things. So it turns out that, yeah, the family was right. He did have like ulterior motives. Of course he did. And it's because he was requesting from the parole board and the parole officials that he be let out of prison on escorted leaves so that he could visit a terminally ill family member in the hospital. And the parole board looked into it, and they're like, hey, who's this family member? Like, is it something we should even entertain with him being on escorted day leaves? He's literally convicted of first-degree murder. And they looked into it, and they denied it. They cited that his crime was horrific. The nature of it was horrific. The views of Erin's family, and then the questionable relationship with the dying relative. So they were like, you were looking at this. You don't seem to have been in like really close communication with this person. It doesn't seem like they're like really important to you or vital to any sort of like rehabilitation you would have and whatever. So like, no, I think you're just using this dying person as an excuse to get out of prison for a while. And the very extensive victim impact statements that Erin's family had put together and told and said aloud to the parole board was cited as being the major factor for denying his application. And again, they probably were really like intense impact statements because, like I said, at this point, it's been almost a decade of Michael just dragging them back in with his appeals and his whatever else. So they're probably just like, my God, we're fucking sick of you.
Yeah, it'd be infuriating.
And it is infuriating because it doesn't end. Because in October 2019, Michael was granted permission by a judge to apply for early parole under the now repealed faint hope clause. So this is a clause that gives prisoners sentenced to more than 15 years the chance to have their sentence reduced, but only after 15 years of the sentence has already been served. So in 2019, that's 15
and it's now
years.
repealed, this thing?
Yes, so only offenders who were convicted prior to December 2nd, 2011 can apply under it because the clause was removed from the criminal code, which is why it has to be approved by a judge now.
Okay.
So he was sentenced, he was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced in 2005. And anyone convicted before December 2011 can still apply under this faint hope clause that you'll get paroled early. But now, like, that doesn't happen.
Good, because that sounds like horseshit.
Exactly.
Like if you're convicted of first degree murder, and they say, I know this isn't how it works, but and they say like this is how many years you have to serve, it always feels like everyone gets shortchanged when they don't end up serving that fucking time. I don't know why we're just like, well, you know, they've really changed their heart. It's like, I'm sure they fucking have. They still did it. Yeah. Like, even if you really did, like, I don't care. If I got convicted for murdering someone and then I was super fucking remorseful about it and I was like, I did this, I fucking ruined lives. You know what I would do? Part of my fucking ownership with that would be doing the goddamn fucking time. That's what you at least owe people. So, you know, the fact that we were like, well, you know, he's 15 years.
He served his 15.
He was a good lad.
Let's give him his chance.
It's like, get fucked, man. This guy's a piece of shit. I don't care what he told you.
Exactly. It's just what is incredibly frustrating about the justice system is that it's like very oriented around criminals. Like maybe it's not favoring of criminals and their actions or whatever, but it revolves around the criminal.
Yeah.
Erin's family.
There's a degree of kids' gloves put on.
Yeah. Like Erin's family is like, oh my, we literally, and like in the case of Debbie and Darcy, they're like, our daughter was literally heinously murdered and taken away from us. She was 18 years old. She was a child still. She had a whole life ahead of her. And we cannot escape her murderer. They have to go to this. He's he's using the faint hope clause to try and get out early. They have to go to this like appeal process. Basically, they have to go there and say statements or give their piece over and over again. And like, that's probably the fucking last thing they want to do.
Yeah.
It's so infuriating. That's her family. They should have a say in being like, this is fucking ridiculous. This is a waste of everybody's time. He's found guilty. To keep him there.
Yeah.
Stop dragging us here. I just get so mad because I can't imagine if I was in their shoes, if this was my loved ones, I would be so furious about it. It's not fair. He's a piece of shit. And he gets to call the shots. Oh my God, okay. I got really hot.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to walk it back now. So, yes, only offenders convicted prior to December 2nd, 2011 can apply for this faint hope clause because it was removed from the criminal code. It has to be approved by a judge. So they have to, you'll have your defense lawyer, whatever, and they'll be like, my client would like to faint hope clause. And a judge will say yes or no. So the judge did grant approval for the previous rejection to be reconsidered because they noted that Michael was only 21 at the time of the crime. He's not, he's had ongoing support from his friends and family. He doesn't have any known ties to gang or criminal activity. He has apparently accepted responsibility for murdering Erin. It only took fucking years and years and years, but, he did it. And he shows signs of remorse now. He's been housed in minimum security since 2014, and he has been found not guilty of any disciplinary conduct while behind bars, and he has completed training and programs while incarcerated. So they're just like really sucking ass. They're like, yeah, Michael, you're so good behind bars. Like, wow, you're the best.
Yeah, he only killed someone. At least he's not a gang member.
I know.
Like,
he hasn't even gotten in trouble behind bars, guys.
It was just the one time with the murder.
But what about the people he murdered? What murder? Like, that's literally what's happening here.
Yeah. I hate that.
Me too. I'm sweaty again. So on April 8th, that's Kobe's birthday. On April 8th, 2021, a jury decided Michael can apply for early parole. So infuriating. The silver lining here, I guess, is that with a sentence of 25 years with no ability to apply for parole would have put him at 20. Yep. Stroke number 2.
That's number 2.
2029 is when he would be able to apply for parole based on his original conviction. Early parole is now June 2026. So It's not like it was immediate.
Yeah.
And again, it's just the opportunity to apply for parole. So it doesn't mean he'll get it.
Yeah.
But it still means he can apply early, and it still means Erin's family is gonna have to keep going to these parole hearings and arguing why he should not get let out.
Yeah.
And this little fucking shit stain is going to apply at every single chance he can get over and over. Because all he's done this whole time that he's been in prison is appealing or seeing how he can get out or get, loopholes and whatever the fucking else. Fucking.
He's just playing games with the system.
Annoying. And so, yeah, in less than 3 years, it's possible that Michael, could be a free man. I don't think he will be. The crime was horrific. They can say now, like, well, he's taking responsibility. Like, fuck off. It took almost a decade for him to even accept responsibility. And the only reason he did is because he wanted day release. Like, this guy
I don't know. Like, I could see them letting him out. That's the thing that bothers me. I could see them letting him out because they've taken a new mentality with the judicial system where they think that, obviously we want to be rehabilitating. So if he's showing remorse and he's been already granted this, whatever, the judge has seen that kind of remorse and sees a possibility of a better life for him, then therefore we can let him out early. There's no justification for holding him in bars for further
Exactly.
consideration.
Especially with these, like,
I could see them making that case. That is not me saying that's a good
I know.
thing.
I know what you're saying. Well, even just let's recall what they were saying when they were first asking for him to have that day release and stuff. And they're talking about how he's been doing schooling. He's been moved from maximum to medium security. He's never gotten in trouble. Like, they're already kind of paving a path to be like, this isn't someone you should be worried about anymore.
Yeah, he doesn't
And
start fights in prison.
he also like would go on and on about how when he, at the time of the crime, he was alcoholic. He had a terrible childhood. So he's obviously going to lean into that too, where it's like, cool, lots of people are alcoholics and have fucking dog shit childhoods, but they don't murder people.
Yep.
Especially if you look at that, the totality of that. You murdered her after she wouldn't drop assault charges. Like,
yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. If you murder someone, you threw your life away. As far as I'm concerned, that's what should happen.
In this cold-blooded way.
Yeah.
It's not like you accidentally like did something.
Yeah, like
but this was cold-blooded. Killed your girlfriend with your, I guess, ex-girlfriend with your bare hands.
Yeah, first degree murder. I'm like, you fucked yourself. The moment you did that and they put you in fucking handcuffs, you're fucking thrown into a cell and enjoy your fucking life behind fucking bars.
That's what justice should be. That's justice, isn't it? Think about the families. Think about the other people. Don't just think about this stink bomb of a person.
Yeah.
I'm getting heated again. Ding, ding, ding. Boxing. Okay. So we're ready to wrap it up, but I don't want to end it on Michael because he just makes my blood boil. And I think he stinks. And he probably does stink. The only time, actually, I'm just recalling now that he's gotten in trouble in prison was because he had contraband pornography, which is really funny. Contraband pornography. Okay, so we're going to end it, but we're going to bring it back to Erin. Because, again, this is about Erin. A ceremony to celebrate Erin's life was held at Calvary Temple in Brandon on Saturday, February 21st, 2004. So this is after the confession, after her family's being informed by Detective Lockhart and stuff that there's a confession, they found her body, they can now lay her to rest. And her obituary reads, quote, "She was the oldest of 3 children, a great sister to her brother Ryan and sister Leslie. Erin had an easygoing personality, making friends wherever she went, always willing to help other people with aspirations to be a counselor. Erin was a good student, loved to read, write stories and poetry, and hoped to compose a book someday. As a young girl, Erin played Barbies, Lego, tag, swimming, and spent much time riding her bike. She loved to participate in sports, including racquetball, baseball, and volleyball. Erin had a love of nature. Her favorite flower was the daffodil. Camping and fishing were her favorite pastimes, often naming the fish that were caught. Erin's family was very important to her, enjoying holiday celebrations and gatherings. She had a wonderful imagination, sense of humor, loved to laugh, enjoying music and singing." And then it ends with, quote, "We miss your smile, we miss your laugh. Your memories are in our hearts and will be cherished always. Our love is with you, Erin. You will be missed by Mom, Dad, Ryan, and Leslie, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins." Mom, Dad, Ryan, Leslie, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. Guess what? That's a long list. Guess what else? Those are all people that are going to have to be dragged through this goddamn parole bullshit.
I didn't even ring the bell yet.
It's not fair.
It isn't fucking fair. It's dog shit.
I hate it.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining if Erin was my sister, my cousin, and I'm like, cool. Can't wait to put my life on hold again to go and again cry about why her literal murderer shouldn't be let out of prison because he took a life. He doesn't deserve to have one. Okay. With that, I basically conclude part 2. and our telling of Erin's case, and it's a devastating case.
Mm-hmm.
Erin, like I have been saying, she's only 18 years old. She had her entire life ahead of her. Yeah, she had her entire life ahead of her. And instead, the scrub took it all away. And he's a grub. That's all he is.
Yeah.
He's a little stinking grub. And he's heartless, and he's emotionless. He's abusive. There's no redeeming qualities. I hope he never gets out of prison. Don't tell me he's rehabilitated, because he only said he was remorseful after he thought he could get day release. And you can't change my mind about that. And the fact that he has constantly appealed his convictions and asked for early release and all of that is very frustrating, because he has continuously dragged Erin's family through this process. And it drives me goddamn wild. He's a selfish prick.
Mm-hmm.
In other news, the writer of those letters never came forward, so no one knows who wrote them.
Fucking, they're just like a side plot to this whole thing,
so
and they're just
weird.
Douchebags, like just such dicks.
Yeah, and while the investigation was ongoing, mainly before they really, pulled the trigger on doing the sting operation, the whole Mr. Big operation, the letters obviously were sort of a part of the investigation, because they were trying to figure out, is this Michael that's writing them? Who wrote them? They even put that ad in the paper. But then after Michael confessed and they knew they got him, the investigation into who wrote them just kind of stopped. They were like, whatever. They didn't add anything.
Didn't really matter.
They only took things away. And if we keep investigating this, we're just really leaning into the notoriety of these things. So let's just say they mean nothing.
Yeah, there's
but
other cases to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. And then in 2014, the Supreme Court of Canada imposed stricter rules when using the Mr. Big sting operation as a tactic to obtain a confession, and stricter rules when using it as evidence in court. So it is kind of getting wrangled in a bit, but can still do it.
Yeah, it does just scream like a tactic that needs some fucking safety bars,
Yeah, especially
like some guardrails around it.
Especially because, I mean, think of the premise in its most simple form. Bringing in your prime suspect into a organized crime syndicate. That already is bias leaning. You will be biased thinking, well, this person wants to be a part of an organized crime ring. Like, they're probably not a good person.
Yeah.
Or they have bad moral compass or whatever. Like, you already have that immediately off the jump.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's just a weird one. I am fairly fascinated by Mr. Big cases. I think it's all just so interesting. It's an interesting study of people. I think, like you said, it's like having a bunch of theater kids that became RCMP officers.
Yeah.
It's really the RCMP that does it. It's not like
and in the
OPP
worst
is
of
doing
ways, I mean this in the worst of ways, to like someone sitting on the jury, it can look like some shit off of True Detective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not good. That's not good for an impartial jury.
Right.
Anyway.
And the people you're dealing with, if your suspect is maybe doesn't have all their faculties about them, if they already have a history of organized crime affiliations or, seedy crimes that way, or if they're like the example you kept using, if they're literal children, teenagers, or really young adults, impressionable men, like,
yeah,
it's like I had said, it's so nuanced, but it still is fascinating to cover and to talk about. And in this specific instance, covering Erin Chorney's case, I do think the Mr. Big sting operation, Mr. Bing, did I say Mr. Bing?
I heard Big, but maybe you did throw in Bing.
I thought maybe I said Mr. Bing sting operation.
No.
I do think that the Mr. Big operation in this particular case was absolutely vital. I don't think they would have found Erin's body ever without having Michael tell Brock where it was where her body was buried. I don't think he would have gotten the confession without it. And Erin's family feels that way. Her parents have always said, we fully support the use of the Mr. Big operation for this. Obviously, they got them their daughter.
Yeah.
And for real, would you ever have found her? I don't think you would have. She's buried in some random person's grave. That's fucking creepy and weird, and you'd never think that.
Yeah, you'd never find it either. I mean, you wouldn't just be like, oh, I bet this grave specifically.
No,
Yeah,
well,
I
and why
think
would you think she was buried in someone else's grave? Like,
yeah. I think this was a good example of it being used properly.
yes.
I mean, there was no problems with it, really, that I could see. I mean, that's kind of why it's like, I'm glad they put guardrails on it. I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's probably a case to be made beyond that, but
Oh, of
my main
course.
concerns have been addressed.
Yeah, you
you know,
can. Yeah, you could sit
Provided
here
those guardrails have
and
been
pick it
placed.
apart and find reasons to be for it, reasons to be against it. But that's like anything controversial or
Yeah.
anything really with a lot of stake in it. Like,
It's one of those things
just-
where
yeah,
I would say if a judge gives you permission to do it, then we also make sure that we don't do some extra seedy shit with that. Like there's rules against like
yeah. A judge doesn't
coercing and
have to
stuff.
give anyone permission to do the operation.
That I would like to see that. Just like
That's
I
maybe,
don't.
yeah, maybe
for
that's
example, like
part of the parameter.
I'm literally just in my head. I'm parroting this, like drawing a parallel between doing like a Mr. Big and the same kind of shit the cops would do to search your place. They can't just walk in.
Right.
They need permission, and then they can do it. And it's shit like that makes me go like, okay, like for example, I'm really uncomfortable with that level of power with the police force doing a Mr. Big operation and for all the reasons we talked about. Well, I'm also like super not cool with a cop just walking into my home. But in both cases, if a judge was like, I grant you a warrant to do this, I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I'm way more comfortable with that.
Yeah, like you said,
So-
there's like safeguards,
Yeah.
stuff put in place.
Mm.
And in this case, it is another good example because they were investigating it. They were following through on every single lead to try and find Erin. They obviously were thrown weird ass curveballs like these letters and psychics and people who were just interfering, but they were still going around the fucking world basically, following shit up.
Mm-hmm.
And they did get those warrants for the car, for the house. They were trying everything, and it was just, they knew they were there, and they just needed that extra push. So they went to this. It's not like they just came out the gates like, fucking can't wait to do Mr. Big. But yeah, so I think in the future, not anytime soon, but in the future, definitely we'll cover other cases that use a Mr. Big operation just so we can see how they vary. And in this particular example, Michael never even got to talk to Mr. Big.
Mm-hmm.
He got the full confession. Brock just got it. And then the police came in and arrested him before Mr. Big could come in. But there is other cases where people actually do go and sit in front of Mr. Big.
And there is a Mr. Big, yeah.
So, yeah, and again, just to see the differences in other sting operations. But, I mean, that's I guess the murder of Erin Chorney, and yeah, I got really heated at the end. Sorry, I just don't like him, and I don't like how it works, and I don't think it's fair for her family or anyone's family that has to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
The daughter's already dead and murdered.
Yeah.
And they have to keep going. I'm not going to start this again. Next week's episode will bring us into October, which means it's going to be like dark and spooky topics coming at you, at you, listener. And again, this happened last year, and this year there is 5 Mondays in October, so that's 5 episodes in October this year, again, like I said. And Paige will be doing an episode in October, so whatever she's going to do, maybe some folklore or spooky cryptid, I'm not sure, but she's going to do an episode about it. And then on Instagram, I have been putting polls in our stories so that listeners can vote on the topics that we cover throughout October. So, if you can, give us a follow over there at Dark Adaptation Podcast and cast your votes. I know not all people use Instagram, but that's what we use. And if you don't have Instagram, but you still want to send in a suggestion or really whatever, send us dark love of any sort, you can do it by email, which is the same handle for Instagram. It's just darkadaptationpodcast@gmail.com. And this episode that we just did was recommended by Trinity. So thank you again, Trinity, for recommending this case. I love doing case suggestions. As you can see, literally I've been putting polls in our Instagram story to hear what you want covered for October. And it seems that most people, based on voting so far, I'm going to be putting it in our story for the next couple of days, just leading into October. Most people want haunted places and just classic true crime.
All right. Shout out to all my haunted places homies.
Yeah, I know that
Love that shit.
you wanted the haunted places. And yeah, so that's why I'm just putting the poll in for a few days in our story. Just in case people didn't see it over like the one day I did have it. And then I'm just kind of accumulating the results to see what people really want versus what they don't, because there's 4 options in the story to vote on. So yeah, that's just my way of engaging with you to see what you like hearing, what you want to hear. You can also just straight up send in a suggestion in the story as well, or to the email, whatever. And I'll do it just like this. Trinity recommended this one a while ago, but I did it. Here we go. And next week, get ready for October. Dyson, you could put in the cool October music that we used.
Make me.
Okay. I will.
Absolutely. I love that one.
That one is sick.
I know, it's so awesome.
That one's sick.
We put so much fucking work into getting that going.
Yeah, so now we can do it again. We'll put it in next week's episode when I'm 90% sure I'll do something haunted.
Yeah.
Someone said that they would like a good haunted house story again because we did the Hinsdale house. So,
I don't know who that was, but like, thanks, because that's also my favorite shit.
And it wasn't you. That would be
and
so
it wasn't
funny.
Me. Yeah.
If you're messaging through we live together and you're like, do a haunted house one, that would be so funny. So I think I'm leaning on that as a haunted places one. I have no idea. We'll figure it out. Come back next week. It's gonna be spooky. It's already spooky in here. Dyson and I went out to Michael's, got some Halloween decorations. We got our first PSLs.
Yep.
We had some pumpkin spice
You
lattes.
didn't pick up on my joke as we introduced ourselves.
I was just ignoring it. So we went through the drive-thru to Starbucks, and we don't go to Starbucks. We are very much Tim Hortons, McDonald's coffee drinkers because we don't like fancy drinks. You and I just drink black coffee. And you're like, can I get 2 venti pumpkin spice lattes? Because that's how you order it, right? And she just went, what's your name? You're like, Dyson? She's like, Dyson? You're like, yeah. She's sorry, Tyson? Yeah. You're like, I'm not fighting this one. She said Dyson and then for some reason put Tyson.
Yeah.
Tyson's venti PSL. Anyway, go get yourself a pumpkin spice latte and we'll catch you on the dark side.
Bye.